Hey everybody, Grigory Pekarsky here. Today we're going to be talking about the future of real estate. It's a very timely conversation, and I am actually with one of the OGs, one of my favorite people in the world, Tommy Choi, who in my opinion is one of the visionaries of real estate. I always come to him for, just kind of insights, hot takes, like what he thinks and where he thinks the industry is going. Obviously, with what had happened, the massive lawsuit last week, there's so much confusion out there. So, Tommy, thank you for coming in.
Man, you're sweet talking me.
I know.
Like
Did you want me to keep going?
Yeah, please, please. I physically have a large head, but you might make it even bigger now.
No, man, thanks for taking the
No,
time.
I think this is what I loved when you reached out to me about having this conversation is because, one, we go back day one. You're a day one OG for me. And we've always cared about, one, we have pride in what we do. Mm-hmm. We care about our businesses. We care about our industry because it comes from a place of gratitude, right, for what it's provided us. And we've always been transparent. And I think right now, there's a lot of that missing in light of compensation lawsuit and just like everything that's going out there. And what I'm excited for this conversation to be about is I'm seeing a lot of content around what's going on with the lawsuits. And I feel like there's a difference between educating and engagement. And I'm seeing more engagement. I'm not a hater on engagement. Do you, right?
Yeah.
I get it, right? That's what's going to get the likes and the views and the comments and whatnot. But with that, I feel like there's also responsibility to educate and to put out facts, to put some of this doubt and unease and nervousness where I've even caught myself feeling at times, right? Mm-hmm. So
like take it a step back from last week, right? Kind of leading up to this, you hear whispers. Yeah. When did this really start? Like, did the lawsuit hit? Like, when was NAR, hey, this is coming your way?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm not a formal representation of like NAR spokesperson on this, but just being an engaged realtor, right? 2019, I think, was when the suit was originally filed, right? And ultimately, what's being challenged in this is there's a couple things, right? It's one, home sellers and buyers felt like they were misled, or taken advantage of with how our compensation is, right? And they're challenging the fact that, one, the fact that the seller side technically compensates the listing agent or brokerage, let's just call it, right? And the listing brokerage offers cooperative compensation to a buyer's brokerage, right? That's represented. They feel that it's inflating prices, right? Because that's built into the price that they're paying. And really that it's not the seller paying because they need the buyer to write a check to physically pay for the property, so it's really coming from the buy side. And then where NAR gets tied into this is that because there is part of clear cooperation policy is that when you list a property on the MLS, you have to offer some sort of compensation.
Right.
Doesn't say how much, what percentage. That's left up to a listing brokerage and that seller, right, to figure out and negotiate. But they feel like there's antitrust in that. And then now you throw in all these other major brokerages that were named to it, and they're saying there's also some sort of collusion going on where there's price fixing.
Yeah. So, when you bring like a powerhouse attorney to represent these sellers, right? The way that it was presented, right? I could absolutely see why the jury only deliberated for 2.5 hours if you don't know the inner workings of how much we actually care about clients and representing them, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, the massive change that this potentially could have for our industry, right? If, let's say, half of real estate agents lose their job, right? I mean, I'd love to hear your take on that in a bit. Yeah. But like, I'm in the house that I think it's going to become more expensive to sell real estate because if there's 100 people in the room that can help you sell a house or bring you buyers or whatever. Now there's 50 people in the room, right?
Right.
There's a heightened demand for that the agents to bring you people. So at the end of the day, if it becomes a negotiation model, well, I have to go to a seller, right? And I'm like, okay, well, you got to negotiate your fee, right? And so, okay, cool, seller, like, let's negotiate. But I'm an expert negotiator. That's what I do, right? So if I see an opportunity to charge a higher valuation for my services, I'm going to do that, right? And essentially, in my opinion, half of the agents that are going to go away are going to be probably either the people that haven't been in the industry long enough or whatever. So you're just naturally going to have the more experienced agents doing this thing. So I think it's just going to become more expensive. And also there's going to be fewer buyers coming, because that's the whole beauty of representing something on the MLS. It's like, hey, first one to get me a buyer wins. And then you have all of these people that are like, from super experienced to I'm just getting my license. And as long as you get me a buyer that gives me my terms, I will give that to you. But now there's fewer people coming, right? So either A, they're going to pay high commissions if I'm going to negotiate something higher. That's one. Or two, they're going to get less buyer representation. So they're going to just naturally get less demand. So that means less prices.
Right. You nailed it on the head, because one, it comes down to, like, you take a step back. The plaintiff's attorney, in my opinion, and everything that I was following, do you ever watch Seinfeld?
Of course, yeah.
Remember Jackie Childs, like the attorney that Kramer hires because the coffee was too hot?
Yeah, yes.
He totally reminds me of that, like, scumbag attorney. But anyhow, here's the thing. You're right. He presented an argument that tugged on the heartstrings of the jury. And that's the other issue. And this is, at the end of the day, why this is going to be appealed, I think, many, many times. Because the data I read, too, showed that a majority of the jury, first of all, I think there's only one female jury, and the rest were male. And the majority of them were renters and tenants. So when you're...
Who hate owners.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's that closing argument, I had no idea. Wow. Was pitched as this David and Goliath, right? And the Goliath is these large brokerages, franchise companies, and NAR, right? And this is, let's beat the corporate, right, mob here. We know that's far from the truth on it. And I think, to your point, what they're saying, one of the things that really, really triggered me was one of the arguments that the plaintiff's attorney, Ketchmark, he said was that now with this day and age of the internet, why is there a need for a buyer's agent? And we all know that they're putting too much emphasis on the pool properties, right? And how you find them, right? Aggregate sites that we all know that have that pull from the MLS. That's like maybe 1 or 2% of our job as a buyer's representative, right? Our job is to protect that investment. It's the largest investment they make, and you need someone advising you and representing you to make sure that you are paying fair market value, right? You are buying a property that is sound and safe, right? And to help navigate you through all of that. So this idea of the internet does that. So all you need to do is just negotiate.
Just use estimates. It'll be fine.
Of course, estimates. We know how accurate those are. It's a joke. I've had the privilege to be able to travel globally on these trade missions, right? On behalf of the realtor family. And you go to some of these countries and they cannot believe how organized real estate is here. They're envious, not because it makes their lives and jobs easier, but for the consumer, right? We have an MLS, a database that has standardized data, right? So we have clean data so that we can properly evaluate. And cooperating compensation is so important because it protects both sides to do their job without having to worry, right? And just focus on their clients, right? So this idea of getting rid of one side, just having the other side represent. It's just a joke, and that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
So
whenever for the longest time, right, like the most important thing that I just know up front is that people have to understand my value, right? Because when somebody doesn't pay you on an hourly basis and you just get a fat check of what they see at the end, right, with on the statement at the closing, right, all of that work, right, you put in hours, tens of hours, sometimes 100 hours into these files, right, and then but you get paid at the end. It's like the visual of that, it's like, you're getting paid how much? I'm like, do you understand how much work I've done? How many 8 o'clock calls did we do? How many times did I go out with you on the weekends, right, without any sort of hesitation? I'm more than happy to do it. That's first. But secondly, I tell my clients is that whatever I get paid, you're getting at minimum that, if not more, and I try to 2-3x how much value you're getting from either the negotiated price I give you, or my forecasting knowledge of understanding, okay, you're going to be here in 5 years. This is how it's going to progress. This is how I see. Like, my job, I tell them, isn't to make this sale happen, right? Yes, absolutely. I'm here for that. My job is to then make you money when you go sell.
Yeah.
So like, those are the kind of like mindset training that I do with my clients so that they understand this is a long-term relationship. I do have to say though, that not a lot of brokers do that, right? I think that I think this is just a wake-up call for our industry, where it's like, right now we're in the fight of our lives. We're in the fight for our jobs, right? And everybody has to understand that this fight is in consumer visual of our value. That's what it is, right? And when all of a sudden they're like, wait, I only have to pay this percentage, I don't have to pay the other bias. Of course, up front, absolutely. If I can save money today, but at the end of the day, it's like, but look at the long-term negative effects of all of these things you're not going to get, all of these people that are going to go away, all of this exposure that you're not going to get, all of these buyers that are going to come to your house. So it's like, would you rather save $1 today to lose 10 tomorrow, right? But nobody, like, that argument isn't there. Like, I don't see anybody talking about that.
Totally.
Why?
And I think the thing is, it's there just hasn't I don't think there's been an opportunity to even put that out there. And I think this is part of the confusion, because there is nothing that's being challenged right now that says, like, hey, the outcome of what's going on in court, what plaintiffs want is that buyers should stop having to, or I'm sorry, sellers should stop having to pay buyers. That's not even being challenged, right? Right now, what's being challenged is this monetary amount, which, what was it, like 1.4 billion?
Which could potentially be 5 billion, right?
Right, that's for like each defendant, right? So, but that's, I think, where the confusion is going, because it's everyone's talking about what could a potential outcome be. Because at the end of the day, business practices will change, right?
Without a doubt, they already are.
Exactly. And I think, to your point, you wipe out buyer representation, just like how the plaintiff's argument has been, like, buyer representation's not needed. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that buyers will overpay for real estate without that representation. Let's just like wipe out, just not even like talk anymore about the financial side of it, because like that is like very obvious to me. Let's talk about just like fair housing. Do you realize like how many people of color won't have access to properties without any sort of buyer representation?
Honestly, I didn't even think about it, because we have a full code of ethics that we have to abide by, right? And I don't even think about it because it's so like,
it's just
like
what
walking.
you do, right? It's what everyone should be doing. But you think about it, you put all that power now into just the listing, and even a listing brokerage being listing heavy on it. It's just that's what the 90s were like before we switched to what the system is now. And people aren't going to have access. People won't have a fair shot at a property, and so there's just so much more beyond just what people will pay and what market values will inflate to without a buyer's agent involved in it, that it's just it can get really bad for the consumer. But I think the challenge in what's happened last week with this the verdict is that now, right, it's like where do we go from here, right? And I think at the end of the day, change is the only constant thing. in our lives, right? The change is inevitable. And what I've learned, at least my 16 years in this business, is that the more things change, the more things stay the same. Okay. And
what do you mean by that?
So here's an example, right? In our state, I guess we can say, or let's just say like the listing agreements that the Chicago Association of Realtors gives us, right? Right now, there's only one spot, where we put a percentage for our compensation, right? Our professional fees in there. That's going to change, right? And it's going to change where now it's going to delineate very clearly what a seller will want to offer compensation wise to a buyer's brokerage and then to us as a listing brokerage, right? Now, while that changed, how everything else stays the same is that we're already having those conversations, right?
Yeah.
When you're in a listing presentation and you're presenting, hey, home seller, my professional fees for the services of marketing and selling your home is $3. You're explaining that you're going to give some of that $3 that they're paying to compensate the buyer's agent, right? It's not like a seller has no clue. And that's part of what's ridiculous about this whole lawsuit thing, because you have this piece of paper, that listing agreement, that's a contract that both parties signed saying, hey, I agree that I'm going to pay you $3 and you're going to keep however many you want and you're going to pay the buyer side X amount of bananas, right? That still stays the same. Now it's just different because now it's showing that, you know what, you're going to give me maybe one banana, you're going to keep 2 bananas for yourself. And now we're spelling that out.
So one of the first national publications that I was waiting for some sort of commentary of like how this is going to affect pricing. And I found the first one was through Axios. They did it through their newsletter last week. And they said home prices might come down. And I was like, okay. Like, or it might become less expensive to buy a home. Yeah. And I was like, let me see this. And they were, right. And then they were like, and their only argument was buyer broker commissions should be going down because of this. So you're going to save some money. I'm like, first off, sellers are the ones that are suing. Right. So they just did the counter of what they were trying to do. They were trying to make more money. Right. So like now they're going to get less money by this article. Right. Buyers are going to all of a sudden be making, it's going to make it less expensive for them to buy when I'm like, people are so incorrect with their mindset. And that's why I was like, totally. You know what, Tommy, we got to talk.
It's like I think about when I read the same article and I can only speak on my lived experience, right? Yep. And in the, I don't know, I probably have gone on almost 1,000 listing appointments. Okay. Never have I, in the conversation of pricing, have I ever met a seller that said, okay, here's what I want to net. Now let's back in your professional fees. Now let's back in these closing costs. And then this is the purchase price we need to be at. Because it doesn't work like that, right? The purchase price is what we're putting out there, right? And now market value is set by what the buyer and seller are going to agree upon, right? Our professional fees, any closing costs associated with the sale, like transfer stamps and whatnot, that's a part of that, right? So the thing that I have to challenge with those bullshit articles like the Axios one and the Trib put one out too, is that makes it seem like what our clients are paying today, right, is not market value. And you take out 3 bananas from here, and now that's the real market value, right? Yep. I think the opposite's going to happen. If there was ever a situation, right, where, the DOJ said, you know what, you have to change your business practice, realtors and sellers we're mandating that they cannot pay the buyer's agent, period, right? Buyer's agent must be paid by the buyer. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen to prices then, right? Because one, right, a buyer that's saved up for a down payment now you're telling them, okay, now you got to bring extra money, not just from your closing costs, but also to pay the person you hire to advise you through the largest purchase. Some people are going to try and finance that, right? Now all of a sudden it's like, hey, this $100,000 property we agreed on, Greg, you know what? Can we bump this up to 105 because my client wants to finance in the professional fees.
Yeah.
Now we're really inflating prices.
Yeah.
Right?
So when it comes to like, this is an awesome point, because at the end of the day, this is like what people completely don't realize, is that at the end of the day, right, we're going to continue to be professionals. We're going to continue, as long, like, there's no way we go away.
Right.
And in the largest transaction in almost like 95% of people's lives, right? Buying a house, the amount of help and assistance that people need, like they need really, really good assistance to make that process happen, right? So at the end of the day, nothing really changes financially, because let's just say we're still paid the same.
Yeah.
It just goes from one side to the other.
Totally.
Right? But like, so first off, visually, that completely changes everything, because before it was like, oh, well, you know, seller side, whatever, like figure this out. This is just normalized. Now it's like an upfront conversation. It's like, wait, how much is this going to cost me? Okay, now I got to figure this out. And then we have to figure out lending practice and how do you get that? Because I'm sure it's going to be financed or whatever. But the affordability goes way down. I mean, if we're talking $1 million plus properties, but average buyer is not $1 million. What, the average a home sale last month was $400,000 in the U.S., right? So, you know, that is a significant increase in someone's upfront expense, cash to table, overall monthly payments. And then if they finance that with interest rates, right? Now all of a sudden our expense goes way through the roof.
Totally.
Right? So
that was one of the closing arguments that Ketchmark put out there. He said that let the rich, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like, let the wealthy let them pay for a buyer's agent representation. And it's like, you're missing the point, because it's the first time home buyer pool. They're the ones that need the representation the most.
And they're the majority of buyers.
Totally. That's how, and through that first purchase for that first time buyer, that's how generational wealth is built. That's how upward financial mobility is built, right? To say that, hey, they have a Wi-Fi signal and a mobile phone, they can do it on their own.
Yeah.
That's absolute BS.
Yeah. So payout, right?
Yes.
I don't know if this is true, because I obviously didn't see, but didn't like per seller make, like they made like $2,000 individually from this thing, if you really look at it, and then the attorneys made like 800 million, something insane.
I don't know what the payout breaks out to, but I'll tell you this. I know that I always get those class action lawsuit things from like Best Buy.
Facebook.
Did you buy a DVD in 1999?
Did you post on Facebook in 2010?
Like, actually, I did. Like, cool. I filled one of those things out and I got a thing back. I'm like, okay, it was actually Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, Facebook,
Sweet,
Zuckerberg, like
Give
Meta.
me some
They
money.
got a lot of money. Like, I'm going to retire. I think my payout was like $1.15.
Yeah, right.
Right? So it's like, it's probably going to be the same thing in the sense that, okay, this huge payout, right? 1.4 billion. You're fighting for your plaintiffs, right?
Yeah.
Your clients, they're getting what? Pennies on the dollar, while, you know,
You just
the
took it
attorney
from
takes 35,
these hard-working
40%.
people, individuals that like put their blood, sweat, tears, love into what they do, and you took it from that pot,
Totally.
and then you just gave it to this guy that
It's-
found his back door into like wealth.
He like did like a reverse Uno Aaron Brockovich. Like he's screwing his clients over, right? I don't know. It is what it is,
It's
right?
infuriating, but you can't focus on that stuff.
So I mean, here's the thing, though. Right? Here's the other thing. That's so.
Yep.
The listing agreement, right? That's probably going to change. And you know what? So here's the other piece of it. Let's put out facts. In doing so, when that kind of change happens for us locally, right, in Illinois, other states have had, that's been a normal thing in their listing agreement for many, many years, having the breakout, right? So it's like, okay, that's not even a big deal. And it's like, I think the majority, I know the majority of realtors that are professional, that this is their industry, right? Nothing's going to change from a compensation standpoint, in my opinion. Okay,
I agree.
And then you look at the change that was just announced within our local MLS, right, where it's now before the compensation, right, the MLS, that NAR, the rule was you have to offer some sort of compensation, right? That means at a minimum like 1 penny.
Sure.
Right. So now our MLS has changed from 1 penny, which you can't do a penny, so it's $1, right? From $1 minimum to now you can actually offer 0. Okay. Pacific Northwest, Seattle, King County area, they changed their MLS to do this almost 2 years ago,
Okay.
right when that lawsuit was filed in
Oh,
2019.
wow. Okay.
So this whole doomsday of like all this like, hallway chatter I hear from colleagues of like, oh, this is going to be the end of like people are going to start screwing each other over and they're going to offer zero or whatever. Like we have an evidence of success and a case study in what's going on with the Northwest MLS where it's basically business as usual, right? So that's what I mean by like the more things change, the more things stay the same. Right? We all know our value. We all know how to conduct business. It's just now you have to be better about having these conversations. Right. You can't be lazy, right? And just like put in a percentage to say sign here, right? You have to really explain that. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
Last thing, right, that's going to be a major change that I think is going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised is we're going to start to see exclusive buyer agency agreements. Like, hey, we should have been doing that from day one, right? I'm guilty of it.
No doubt.
It took me a while to adopt that. And I think part of that hesitation is people just not knowing how to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to be very important, right? For our team, I'll share like what that looks like, how, because we've used it for, I don't know, maybe the last 5 years. It's just stating like, hey, Greg, I'm going to ask the seller of the property that you want to write an offer on to compensate me first. But in the case that they don't offer me compensation, my professional fees are going to be paid by you, right? That's all this piece of paper is saying. And that's at the end of the day, if you have a client that's not comfortable with that, then you probably dodged a bullet, right?
Without a doubt. So one of the things I wanted to say to our realtor brothers and sisters, one of the best things that I saw coming out of it once the dust started to settle is when people like kind of got their footing again, they started to be like, you know what? This is actually a really good thing because it's making us have these conversations about how is this going to benefit the consumer. And at the end of the day, knock us down. Realtors care so much about our clients because it's been enrooted so deeply in us that we are all about watching their best interests.
Totally.
So like now it's like these angles of, okay, great. So first off, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, whatever. Yep. But like, what can we do today? Let's have these conversations, right?
100%.
And like, let's start sharpening our pitch on what our value is. So then people are like, well, what's our value, right? I mean, because when you're not thinking about it, I'm like, oh, sure. Okay, great. So like at Vest stuff, right? For example, we're like, okay, cool. So like, what are the cool things that differentiate us, right? So we're talking about that. And then we're like, wait, can we do more? Right. Can we offer more value? So now it's like, could this be like a new race for like overvalue delivery, right? Because at the end of the day, it is very difficult to have a buyer to sign exclusive buyer agency, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of trust in that. So you do have to show what and why they should do that, and it's in their best interest too, right?
Yep.
So, and a lot of that comes into your pitch and to why they should, which comes down to the value you offer, 100%. Right? So at the end of the day, like that is one of the best things that I saw in the last week, and the positive news, oddly enough, has only come from the real estate community.
Right.
That's the crazy, weird thing, right? So I want to kind of just shift and finish this thing off with, no one has a crystal ball, right? But Choi has a pretty good handle of future things. I've always liked to ask you about your opinion on stuff, things like that. Where do you think we are in a year, 3, 5?
I think we're all going to be Uber drivers.
Okay, fantastic.
So here's the thing.
It's like,
okay?
I'm out of here.
So, one, we're going to see NAR, all the other defendant brokerages, they're going to appeal, right?
Of course.
So,
and question, how long do you think that process is going to take?
I think, I'm not an attorney, but I don't think it's going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, but with that said, even with the appeals, that's not something, because I'm seeing a lot of people now like kind of say that as like, I think, oh, feel better, like, release some air here, oh, that's going to appeal. You can't just like kick this can down the road. At the end of the day though, whatever happens with the appeal and how long it takes or whatnot, like we said, right, in this conversation today, change is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We need to adapt and change. Now, with that said, if there were any major like changes that are mandated from powers above, I don't see anything really happening for another like 3 to 5 years, right? And I think that's the biggest thing today, right? We have to, I've learned that when I feel anxiety, it's because I'm living in the future, right? And when I start to feel depression, it's because I'm living in the past, right? So how do you find that present, right? And for me, it's our job pre-lawsuit to post-lawsuit today has not changed at all. We still have to do the same activities. We still service our clients the same way. We still get compensated the same way, right? So, there's nothing really to feel anxious about yet. So I think the biggest thing is be present, focus on your business, focus on your clients, right? Focus on growing, and especially navigating this market that's challenging. And then if things have to change 3 to 5 years from now, then we just need to adapt and change, right?
So the best thing, would you say, for people that are nervous that in the industry, real estate agents, and they're like, okay, I understand, I can't change the future. Definitely can't change anything in the past. But what can I do today? Would you suggest for them to start figuring out their value pitch and have them start using exclusive buyer agreements? I think
it makes complete sense to use exclusive buyer agreements. I think you have to hone in on your value, right, that you're bringing. You have to be, I always say, the chief economist for each client, right? You have to study the market, understand the data, understand what these numbers mean. And most importantly, I think the ones that win in this market is people that are able to put context for their clients to this stuff, right? Because our clients don't know what FHA is and what 2 to 4 units, just, the changes they made. You have to put that context in for them. So I think today that's what you focus on to stay present, and not what's down the road, because there's always something down the road, right? Remember, let's look back the last 5 years. iBuyers were going to take over, and buyers weren't needed anymore, right? Our listings were going to be threatened. I think about it, right? We got into the industry roughly around the same time, right? I got licensed in 06, went full time in 07. And I look at that as that's like almost getting into the business this year, right? Because that was right when the last great recession was hitting. Everything was like whatever. And I was kind of like, cool, I want opportunity. So even as much as people will exit our industry for market condition wise, or even just like, Danny Glover, Lethal Weapon, I'm too old for this shit, like I'm out. But I also think there's going to be continued new realtors that come in that seek out the same opportunities and success you and I have found. And I welcome that. Right.
And last question. This is also continuing on what's going to happen in the future in your crystal ball. What happens with NAR?
NAR is always going to be here, in my opinion. Right. Because here's the thing. It's, and that's part of like the, I think, engagement content that I see out there, right? Because it's easy to, take a dump on NAR. NAR historically has helped bring everything in for our industry, right? And help organize it better, help set standards that create an even level playing field for consumers, right? And the advocacy piece, I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, like that's how we are able to conduct business, and we need someone out there to continually protect that. And the code of ethics is just such an important foundational piece that we hang our hats on and that we abide by, right? And I think that's something that people sleep on, and I think they really do understand how important that is, especially when I go to other countries on these trade missions and they don't have a code of ethics. They wish they had.
Right. Dude, I think that what NAR needs to do is they got to go the Domino's route. Remember when Domino's went in and they were like, our pizza sucked, but here's what we did to make it better. and they were like, they like just called themselves out, right?
Yes.
And it's like and it was an amazing campaign because it was like they just kind of called a spade, and they were just like, we got to get our pizzas better.
Yeah.
NAR, I personally think they're like, listen, we fucked up.
Yeah.
We did. We maybe took our eye off the ball a little bit. We got a little bit, comfortable in our seats. But here's what we're doing to change that.
Yeah.
And like addressing these things that, like, by the way, consumers, at the end of the day, like, you guys come first, realtors are second. Like, we are here for you. Like, and like educating in a way that like is appetizing because it's so top of mind. I mean, I just really hope NAR doesn't sleep on this right now.
You know what? I think that I agree with you. And I'm already seeing that kind of ownership of we messed up.
Yeah.
There were these issues, and now we're going to, moving forward, work on how we can be better, right? And also, I'm seeing even more transparency in the communication. The current president now, Tracy Casper, she's incredible leader, and she's been super transparent on everything. Almost like, in my opinion, wow, this is just so much information that's out there. But I'm seeing that change, and I think just like our industry is seeing change, I think they're seeing the change, and I think at the end of the day, everyone's going to come out better.
So NAR has to make tastier pizzas.
Yes.
Yeah. And we got to stay connected and close to this, Tommy. So thank you for coming in,
man.
and let's
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's do some more check-ins maybe and kind of see where we are in like 6 months or so.
Let's do it. Yeah.
My man.
Yeah. So when I'm like wrong on everything, you can just post receipts.
I'd be like, remember when you said? All right. That's it. That's a wrap, my brother.